Jesus came, and this is really good, and we'll get into this in just a couple of minutes, but John 5:5 said, and a certain man was there which had an infirmity 38 years. Now 38 has a significance. It would be hard for anyone to leave this community once you've established friends and family, and there are people there that I believe had become so accustomed. I think there was a lot of things there. There were people that were accustomed to staying there. They wanted to stay there. I remember wanting to pray for a man one time who had some kind of an infirmity in his legs, and I asked him if I could pray for him, and he said no. He said, I don't want you to pray for me. He says, I don't want to lose my Social Security. So again, there are people that don't want to be healed. Some do not want to be healed. That's simply the way it is. And so they were in this community, and in 38, like I said, has significance. We read in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, that there was supposed to be a penalty paid for the 12 spies that went in and didn't have the faith to believe to take the land, and God pronounced a judgment upon them of 40 years. Well, if you take away the 2 spies, it talks about how they spent 38 years there, 38 years in that sin, and took that time to weed out all that unbelief and tried to weed out all that those problems there. 38 years prior for sin, for unbelief. But I think to myself, the trials of this man, he had been at Bethesda for a long time. From the onset of the sickness, since that day, he watched. Do you know how many people got healed when he was there? Do you know how many people he saw get healed? We do know. Come on, how many people got healed since he was there?
In 38 years.
38.
1,000?
Good. 38. Because once a year, the angel would come down.
Once a year,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So we know it's 38 people. So he watched 38 people get healed out of that massive amount of people that were there. He watched 38 people get healed, none of which was him. None of which was him. And so I think to myself, as he watched these people get healed with that bitterness, and finally grew anger, and finally a loss of all hope, Jesus didn't heal everybody there. Do you notice that? With a loss of hope, he gravitated to others with a loss of hope. How many know that can happen? When you have a loss of hope, you can gravitate to others that have a loss of hope. And you have to be careful of who you gravitate towards. You have to watch out if you gravitate to the critical people. Want to just criticize every little thing that you're doing, or somebody that's picking everything that you're saying, or somebody from your family that is always naysaying, or always sick. You know, you sit. My pastor used to tell me, you go to Michigan and you sit around a dinner table, and pretty soon one person starts talking about their infirmity. What happens when you sit at a table and somebody starts talking about how sick they are? Somebody else tries to outdo them. Well, you should see me. Well, I had 2 wisdom teeth out. Well, I had 4 wisdom teeth out. Oh, well, that's nothing. I went through a sickness. Pretty soon, that's all you're talking about. That's all you're talking about. Sickness was their life. They had no other schedule. They had no other life. This is all they had, was the sickness, and that's what their common point was their sickness. So you have to really be careful who you gravitate to when there's a loss of hope. Dale and I were talking about that last night. You have to just really be careful. The Bible does say, and we talked about this last night, about good, evil companions can corrupt good manners. But we talked about the idea that you can be in a place where you can be influenced by the talk. You can be influenced. Now, he wasn't just listening to it; he lived in it. He was living in that place of hopelessness. And that was a hard place to be. Bitterness and anger, and some people getting mad at everybody else for getting in before they were able to get in. Finally, a loss of the hope. And Jesus didn't heal everyone there, just the one who had lost his hope. Did you notice that? What I just said? He didn't heal everyone there. He healed just the one that lost his hope. Just the one who had lost his hope. And of course, on this day, there was no hope at all because he could not be healed on that day. If that was the law and somebody said, I'm going to heal you today, they'd say, don't tease me. Don't tease me. You know that's not possible today. You know that that's not possible today for me to be healed. Proverbs 13:12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when the desire comes, it's a tree of life. Hope, when it keeps being pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, you can get actually sick to your stomach. He had been resigned to the reality that he would always be there. He started to get to that point where he realized he would always be there. He was just going to live out the rest of his days there. And that is a type of hopelessness. The day he died would be his freedom. But on the day that Jesus passed through, there was even less hope. It was a Sabbath. There were no angels dispersed on the Sabbath. So I think to myself, did even the angels have to respect the law of the Sabbath? Because there was nobody that was getting healed on that day. There was nobody that was getting healed on that day. And so even the angels had to respect the Sabbath. The Sabbath became a very dark day for those who walked in sickness. Can you imagine the heart of the Father when this is going on? Can you imagine the heartbreak of the Father himself? Mm-hmm. Realizing that law stole the very thing that he's good at. And I think that's part of the reasons why he sent Christ at this point. Sometimes we do turn to God, and these people too. Sometimes we turn to God, but with the wrong goal in mind. Like this man who wanted Jesus to help him get to the pool. I think we often look to God to, give us things, but we don't really want to get close to him. What we need is God himself. It's not what God can give us, but what God can do for us. It's not, God, get me to the pool. It's got to be Matthew 6:33 here. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So, don't seek for someone to get you to the pool. Don't seek for someone to get you to the pool. That's not what this is all about. It's seeking to get closer to him, to get to him. So it's not, don't get me to the pool, God. No, get me to you, God. Get me to you, God. If I'm depressed over my finances, I want God to give me a better job, help me with the lotto or whatever, when I really need to just depend on God and let him work out the details. I thought some interesting parallels of the 38. The number 38 just keeps sticking to my mind. And I think there's some parallels in the Bible that you haven't seen, that I haven't seen. I think people say, the numbering system came in after it was man that added the numbers. Well, you know what? Do you think God would let man add the numbers that would be meaningless? I think not. I think God's bigger than that. So when I look at I look at 38 years in an infirmity, and then I turn over and I see Psalm 38, which is a psalm of David, and David is going through the same thing. Psalm 38:15, for in thee, O Lord, do I hope. It's, I believe, a parallel that sometimes we don't look at and so don't see in the Bible. Psalm 38:18, for I will declare my iniquity. I am sorry. I will be sorry for my sin. Psalm 38:21, forsake me not, O Lord. O my God, be not far from me. Make haste to help me. I look at the idea of the parallel between these 38 years of sin and David's 38th Psalm, and I think it's powerful. Then I read something like go to Isaiah, and I read chapter 38 of Isaiah, and I realize it looks like the same thing that's happening in Bethesda, only it's with King Hezekiah, with a king that's ready to die, and God bringing him healing at that point. And then I see in this is good. If I look at Acts, and I have to read this because I want to get this right. Acts 3 and 8. Speaking about a man that was leaping, walked, entered with them into the temple, walking and leaping and praising God. Again, a 38. I don't know if there's a parallel there. I just thought it was quite interesting, and I wanted to share that with you. In verse 6, when Jesus saw him lie, and he knew that he had now been a long time in that case, he said unto him, wilt thou be made whole? Interesting thing to ask somebody. Will you be made whole? Do you want to be healed? Do you want to come away from this community? Do you want to come away from your friends and your family? Because if you're healed, you can't stay here. Did you hear what I just said? If you're healed, you can't stay here. If you're healed, you can't stay here. If there's a change like that, something's going to be different in your life. And so he said, do you want that change? And when Jesus saw him lie, to me, this is from the word tithemi. In the widest application, literally and figuratively, it means a passive or horizontal position. Doesn't mean he was totally paralyzed, because obviously he had gotten himself down to the water a little bit late, a little bit too much, a little bit too little too late was his case. But he was in a passive or a horizontal position and different from an upright stance here. And so we see a man that was not walking, but he was in a horizontal position. I look at the idea that a high achiever failure is torture, but for a low achiever makes friends with failure. He had finally gotten to the point where he was just starting to make excuses of why he couldn't be healed. Why he couldn't be healed. Why he couldn't come away from this community. And whether they were valid excuses or not, he made a lot of excuses surrounding